Nerdrotic.com.
Welcome back to Nerdrotic. My name is Gary Beekler, and I come to you from Nerdrotic.com, and we need to talk about Captain Marvel and what the creator of Captain Marvel thinks of the film. Now, we're talking about Roy Thomas, the successor to Stan Lee as editor-in-chief of Marvel, creator of so many characters, I couldn't name them all in a 10-minute video, but I'll show you some of them here according to Wiki. He is one of the best EICs Marvel has ever had, one of the best writers Marvel has ever had, and a person I respect. He co-created Carol Danvers, of course, with the late, great Gene Colan. And he has given his thoughts on the film. In my last video, link will be in the description, I mentioned a Screen Rant article that said the Skrulls were depicted better in the film than they were in the comics, which is the shill media just being the shill media, and they have no shame, especially the person who wrote that article. The Skrulls are some of the best villains in the Marvel Universe, and Roy Thomas really takes the film to task with the Skrulls, but he also gives his overall thoughts. Let's go to Bounding into Comics. Roy Thomas, who co-created Carol Danvers alongside Gene Colan, recently expressed his dislike for the way the Skrulls are depicted in Marvel Studios' recent Captain Marvel film. Roy Thomas worked with Stan Lee in the Silver Age of comics and came up with the idea of the Kree-Skrull War during his run on the Avengers, which began in Avengers number 35. One of the best stories in the history of comics, by the way. He recently discussed seeing Marvel Studios' Captain Marvel with Bleeding Cool. You should read Bleeding Fool. It's a much better site. He specifically did not like the way the Skrulls were depicted in the second half of the film. Actually, the one thing I really hated in the film, I think he said hated, by the way, it's not dislike, in the film was turning the Skrulls into a peace-loving race, with the Kree, as far as I'm concerned, as the principal conceptualizer of the Kree-Skrull War, and I suspect Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would agree with me, the Skrulls and the Kree are each as bad as each other. As they say, having the Skrulls all mushy and family-friendly at the end left a bad taste in my mouth. But I loved them for most of the movie, when they were doing shape-shifting stuff that looked, and as far as I'm concerned, were downright evil. And a reminder over at the 100% certified shill Screen Rant from Andrew Dice, who self-described editor and nasty woman, Captain Marvel makes the MCU Skrulls better than the comics. Wow. So why aren't the Skrulls of Marvel Comics best known as peaceful, unwilling participants in an unjust war? Part of the answer is that by the time the Avengers met the Skrulls in the comics, they were embroiled in a war with the Kree. As a result, neither side had been depicted as particularly heroic or on the just side of the conflict. And in a rush to use them as an allegory, you ended up robbing the audience of one of the best villains in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and robbing us of some of the best stories, and didn't even have any of them shapeshift into an actual superhero. They might do it later, but it's kind of lame at this point. And Andrew Dice, I'm not sure how many of the comics you've actually read, so I don't know if you should rush out to an article like this. Let's get back to Roy Thomas and what he thought overall of the film Captain Marvel. Still, Jan Rog turned out to be appropriately vile, a vile portrayal by Jude Law, and that's all well and good. I'm sorry the movie folks didn't use my improved Kree-Skrull War term for the Kree Supreme Intelligence, i.e. Intelligence Supreme, but that's simply because Supreme Intelligence has always sounded to me like an IQ score and not the name of an intergalactic AI entity. Then he gives his overall views of the film, and he said it was good enough, but if you read between the lines on this, he's probably being as nice as he possibly can, and it really doesn't come off that nice. The reviewers are, I think, basically right. It's not one of the better Marvel movies. Not as good as an origin of the recent Black Panther, or dare I say, the Warner DC Wonder Woman movie. Because it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a better feminist journey. It was a better hero's journey. It was a better film. Even with that weak third act, I would watch Wonder Woman 100 times before I would watch a nanosecond of Captain Marvel. But it's entertaining, especially as a setup of things to come. And very soon, at that, in Avengers Endgame, Brie Larson was fine. Although she wasn't given all that much emotional stuff to do. Well, maybe they just gave her what she could do. Seeing her and a younger Samuel Jackson interacting was a worthwhile experiment. And there were lots of nice touches along the way, along with the usual fantastic CGI action sequences. Some of the worst CGI in the MCU. Come on out and say it, Roy. And then Donald goes on to say pretty much what I think. If we're going to have Brie Larson be the face of Marvel from here on out, they're going to have to give her a Winter Soldier type sequel. She's going to have a sequel with a bunch of other Avengers in it. More superheroes to bring more butts in the seats. Because the follow-up to this, if it's just a solo Brie Larson film, is not going to do well. And I don't care what anybody says, it's not going to do well. People think this movie is meh overall. I think it's bad, but I will concede that many people just thought it's okay. Some people like it out of spite. And as with all things in nostalgia, some people just like it for now and in a couple of years might come around. Listen, I will concede again, it's a mediocre movie to most people, and it's definitely a hit. It doesn't make it good. That's why it is comical to see the shill media jumping all over themselves, mental gymnastics, whatever analogy you want to use, coming out in defense of this film, and Disney flexing its muscles, forcing other companies to capitulate to their will, forcing the access media to kneel, and silencing critics' voices. Of course, a major corporation would love to silence all the critics, all the fans. They don't know what to do. And in tripping over themselves and asserting their power, and so many people agreeing with them, and I'm going to be doing a separate video on this, this is kind of a dangerous precedent. What happens when it is something you don't agree with and people start shutting down your voice just out of loyalty to the MCU? That's why I was against the Fox-Disney merger. They have too much damn power, but so many people wanted to see the X-Men. And hell, I would love to see the Fantastic Four, but it's not worth it. And considering what we may be seeing in the future of the MCU, are you sure you want to see the MCU take on the X-Men? I'll say again, I hope they do not go down the woke road. I hope the Russo brothers pull off a miracle and Brie Larson is great in Avengers Endgame. I hope so. That's what I want. But if it ends up derailing that film, I won't be quiet about it. But so far, Disney can't silence all the voices. I won't kneel, and it looks like Roy Thomas won't either. Roy Thomas liked Wonder Woman more than he liked Captain Marvel. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, hey, thanks for listening this long, and thanks for the click. May the small folks sing songs of your greatness.
Nerderotic.com. Please subscribe.